Hello everyone, and how are we? WPATH, continuing the conversation, is my topic today. So thank you very much for your response to my initial 3 videos on this very important and very concerning topic. I think it's absolutely vital at this point that we keep the conversation going, because we have, as a collaborative endeavour, all of us flitting around doing our own thing, all the different organisations, the wonderful people involved, have brought this to fruition through their hard work and dedication, in some cases, over many years. So I think it's important that we recognise that this is an ongoing thing. I've had people message me saying, this is wonderful news, this is great, it is wonderful news, this is tremendous, it is tremendous. But what people seem to forget is that this information has been around for a long time. And it is wonderful that it has now entered the fray in the way that it has. But it's important that we recall the work carried out by others that got us here. And quite frankly, he says, with his big head, I'm counting myself in that list. There could be a very long list of people. But for example, Jennifer Gluck, Jennifer Billick, the work of Redux, who have brought to the fore the information about eunuchs and etc. All that's been going on with WPATH some time ago. In fact, I think maybe 2 years ago. And yet the zeitgeist was not ready for their message, but we now seem to think that the zeitgeist is ready for the message now. So I do offer some words of caution, which aren't going to make many of you happy, as it didn't make the people who messaged me saying, isn't this wonderful, happy, when I suggested that I don't think it will make the one slight damn bit of difference if we look at it from a certain view. And that certain view is that there's a wonderful interview where Graham Glinner says, I thought that when I told everybody they were doing this to children, that it would just, people would be horrified. They're not, they weren't, he said. It didn't make any difference. I don't think we understand across the board, some of us obviously do, many of us do, across the board, that there are people who are never going to agree or see that this is what is happening. And even if it does, they're going to stick their heads firmly up their own jacksies, and that will be all they'll want to know about it. And we're going to have to live with that fact. I think it's fantastic what's happening now, and I personally think that it is going to make a difference. But when looking at it through a different lens, a cynical and rather darker lens, I don't think it's going to make one iota of difference at all. I don't. Now, in America, we'll see what it does there. In Australia and New Zealand, in Ireland, yeah, we'll see what it does there. In the UK, I don't think it's going to make a damn bit of difference. Not one iota of difference. Because we're about to enter a dark phase with the imminent arrival of the Labour Party. And they'll ignore it. Because they don't do facts and evidence, do they? That's the whole point of what's been happening with the Labour and the lefties and the Liberals. And they don't, evidence doesn't do it. They just shut off. You know this as well as I do. So being cynical in that deeply, darkly cynical way, I'm saying it's not going to make a single bit of difference. Barry thinks it is. You get my drift, right? Now, I want to keep the conversation going, so that's why this is called WPATH, part 4, whatever you want to call it. But also, I want to bring to you something that's come from Malcolm Clark at Twister Films, which I think is vital. And I've written to Mia, who produced the report, so I'm waiting to hear back from her, about the history of this. Now, this is something we need to get right. Now, I understand that hundreds of you are reading the report. I'm being sent messages all the time saying, can you cover this? Can you cover this? Can you cover this? I'm inundated. Right? I'm literally inundated. So anything not to do with WPATH is really on the back burner right now. And anything to do with WPATH, there's too much of it to deal with. It's that simple. And it's being dealt with in different areas. So we're all going to have to look to put together the narrative that comes with it. What I'm going to focus on for today is the history of WPATH, which Malcolm Clark has kindly popped up, one of his brilliant Substack. If you haven't joined Malcolm's Substack yet, it's 30 quid a year, spend the money. All right, it's money once well spent, go and do it. So I'm going to go through something that Malcolm's written, because I've got a couple of questions that I'm hoping Malcolm can follow up with to give us even greater clarity on the historical position regarding WPATH and the transgender movement and all its machinations. So, the leaks from WPATH, says Malcolm, mark the beginning and the end of gender-affirming healthcare. The question is why an organisation so rooted in pseudoscience was ever given the time of day by regulators. This is really good. This is hammer, nail, head stuff. You know, it's really good. No organisation has played a greater role in the adoption of the pseudoscience of so-called gender-affirming healthcare globally than the World Professional Association of Transgender Health. This is the WPATH quacks. That's why this week's release of leaked discussions between some of its leading figures suggesting possible medical malpractice could prove a pivotal moment in the gender wars. It's been a long time coming. The truth is, WPATH has been little more than a pressure group made up of a mixture of saucer-eyed trans activists and self-professed experts in disciplines like endocrinology, psychiatry and surgery. Experts, and Malcolm's got that in the old speech marks, quotes, who just happen to pocket huge profits from the mutilation and sterilisation of deluded people who are convinced they were born in the wrong body. Ka-ching! Exclamation mark. Yet, by a combination of external bullying and internal feeble-mindedness, some of the world's top medical authorities, from the BMA to the American Academy of Pediatrics, you've got American there, Mulk, it's in twice, American has given WPATH the stamp of approval, citing its regularly updated ethical guidelines and standards of care as clinical best practice. Once even the NHS was happy to genuflect the organisation. No longer. The revelation that the latest version of the Standards of Care included a new chapter asserting that being a eunuch is a gender identity led the NHS to distance itself from WPATH last year. Now, I've got my doubts about this, but let's move on. It didn't exactly help that one of the key movers in adding eunuchs to the list of gender identities was revealed to be a member of an online group that shared porn fantasies about boys being castrated. The further you dig, the more obvious it becomes that this is about paraphilia and fetish and men's sexual rights and gay men's and gay men are seen as the ultimate baddie because they hate that it's homophobia writ large. Right from the very beginning, the Beaumont Society was homophobic. Right from the very beginning. The leaked document from WPATH's own private message forum and a video recording of an internal panel discussion were released by the noted journalist and whistleblower Michael Schellenberger and his team at campaign group Environmental Progress. The WPATH files, as they've been dubbed, were refreshingly light on castration porn, but when it came to medical ethics, were almost as jaw-dropping. Now, Maya Hughes has written the report, and as I mentioned earlier on, I've written to Maya, so it's worthwhile. If you've not started yet, give it a go. It's long, but read the executive summary. Give you a flavour of what's going on. Now, what's been seen I've already covered, what has been mentioned I've already covered, but what Malcolm's done here in this Substack, and this is why you should go and read it, is that Malcolm has gone much further into the history, talking about how WPATH was founded by Harry Benjamin. Now, as far as listen, back in the mists of time, when I was researching all this stuff 5 years ago, the first surgeries that tried to do anything like this were in the Boer War. Now, I may be wrong about that, but I think it was the Boer War. I'm sure I've read this, where for the first time men could get their bits shot off because of the nature of the war. It was much more mechanised. So the Boer War was where these operations first originated. But again, 1906, according to the WPATH files, is when it really began to move. And that was at the height of the eugenics movement. There was all that nonsense was going on. So Malcolm gives us a coverage from Harry Benjamin, who began his career in the late 1930s, but was a bit of a quack. Stayed a quack as far as I'm concerned. He became obsessed with transsexuality in the 1950s. You need to read this. But my question to Malcolm is this. Malcolm, Harry Benjamin, we know about Harry Benjamin, and we know prior to that some of the stuff that went on, certainly from your excellent history lessons on what the Nazis were up to, and the medical experimentation that followed from Lydia Elb and such like. But Malcolm, I'm trying to get my head round. Get me from Harry Benjamin to Susie Green. That's the bit I'm trying to understand in more detail, Malk. So I don't know whether you can help with that. So if Malcolm can't, perhaps somebody else can. But that particular link between 1906 up to Harry Benjamin, I think we're fairly clear on that one. But Harry Benjamin to Norman Spack to Susie Green to Press for Change. How can you possibly give us some insight? Or maybe you already have, and if so, Malcolm, my apologies. Please do let me know and I'll make sure everybody gets that link. That's it. It's just a short one today because I needed a breather. I hope you understand why. Okay. Other than that, become a warrior teacher. Come, join us. It's going to be fun. This one starts in a couple of weeks' time and I'm very excited to have people on board with that. Other than that, buy me a coffee, blah, 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 the usual. All right. Right now, go away. I'll see you later.